I had a wonderful gent called David who came to me, who was in the insurance space, and he'd sort of said in the last year and a half, he said, I've had no new clients. So we worked with David for 6 weeks. So week 5 with David, and he turned up on our group coaching call for 5 minutes and he said, Emily, I've just closed 8 out of 8 meetings in 1 week, and he charged each of those clients $2,800 on the spot, and he'd made near $30,000 in a week.
Hello, this is Andy Seeley with Creatively Disruptive, and this is another episode of The Disruptors. In fact, this is probably episode 2 of The Disruptors, so another one is literally, it's another. And we're very lucky today to have the opportunity to have a little chat with the lovely Emily Ratcliffe. And we're going to talk to Emily a little bit about business growth and revenue. She is the CEO and owner and founder and everything of The Closing Coach. And just a FYI, and to let you all know, we actually work together. Emily works with my team from a sales coaching standpoint and has done a wonderful job. So I would just want to make sure that I'm being very honest with everybody, but I thought this conversation would be really useful because there's a lot of real great wisdom that this lady is going to be able to share with you, and stuff that, quite frankly, is very human and natural, and people probably just go, well, that makes sense. Well, why were we doing it the other way? So we're going to talk a little bit about Emily and her background and her process for sales and all the good things to do with closing business and growing revenue. But thank you for joining us, Emily. Nice to have you.
Me.
How are things in Chester, right? You're in England?
I am. I'm in England. For those of you who don't know where Chester is, it's kind of around about the middle of the country. So yeah, not too far from the coast, which is nice.
Yeah, it's somewhat close to Wrexham. If anybody watches Welcome to Wrexham, I guess.
It's, a stone's throw.
All right, so let's go into jump straight into stuff. So Emily, you've closed, I mean, the word on the street is $8.5 million in 2 years of sales, without relying on a pushy method or tactics to get people over the line. You're not like pushing people into a hole and forcing them to purchase from you. What inspired you to start The Closing Coach, and how did you get that first breakthrough moment?
Yeah, I mean, the no pushy sales tactics is a little bit key there because it makes me cringe. So yeah, 8.5 million. I mean, what kind of helped me start the whole journey with this was I kind of, a long time ago, was very well known for questioning processes, little misopinionated, going in saying, why are we doing things this way? And many moons ago, I worked for a very, very big real estate business that had a sales team, and I was actually sales and marketing director. So it was much more on the marketing side than sales, and had this huge sales team that just were doing all of the things that every typical salesperson does, that kind of cheesy persona that you will know. And I just kind of didn't gel with it, didn't feel right. Obviously, none of the leads were converting, and it was me that was getting screamed at every single day for why these leads weren't converting. So after literally months of not hitting targets, literally crying after being shouted at in board meetings of being like, why is this not working? I ended up kind of going into the sales team itself, looked at loads and loads of recordings, and I'm talking before AI, so I had to manually sit through hundreds of call recordings and say, okay, what's going on the ones that close, what happens on the ones that didn't, and basically started to kind of pull my own theories together of, I think this is what we need to start leaning towards. When I tested that strategy and I kind of started to do my own calls, my own sales calls, and jumped on the phone, then they all started to close, and I was like, kind of onto something when we move away from this cheesy, pushy, traditional sales strategy. Why don't we just speak to people like humans? So that's kind of where the whole inspiration started to come from. And then lo and behold, being a salesperson, I followed the money. I got myself a job in sales, really enjoyed doing that, and then started to, I guess, get asked what I was doing by other sales reps around me and by other businesses. And everyone was saying, Emily, how are you doing this? Why do people open up to you so much? How do you get this much information from people? And it was down to exactly what I was doing. But at that point, I didn't really have a formula, right? I just kind of felt my way through the dark in terms of this seems to be working and people seem to like giving me money, but what's going on from me? So then I had to kind of formulate a strategy, really. So that's kind of the birth of The Closing Coach and how it all originated.
Wow. So there is an element, though, you're probably talking about selling to British personalities and so forth, right? The British definitely have a different personality. I actually think the British are way harder to sell to than almost any other nationality on this planet. Probably because they're so anti being sold to. I think in America, I think people kind of expect to be sold to and kind of somewhat enjoy it. But I think still, just from a human standpoint, I think from my experience with what you do, it's kind of like talking to people as humans and trying to find out what they really are there for and trying to look out for them was kind of the feeling that I got when I actually did the sales process with you. And it is special. I've been doing sales training for 20 years, and mine mainly came from Sandler sales system, which was taking people through a process, which is kind of consultative and somewhat similar, but definitely a lot more rigid, which kind of felt like people were being pulled through something, which you knew that there was definite times when you could tell that people were feeling, I don't want to be pulled through this. I want these things. And what I love about what you've kind of put together is the flexibility that it has, where somebody feels, honestly, I remember the conversation that I first had with you, I kind of felt like I was just talking to somebody rather than actually in a sales process. Do you feel that's one of the things that really, is the magic sauce?
I think it's a big element in it. And I think one of the things I spend a lot of time doing is taking scripts off sales teams, because I think there's a big stigma around sales anyway. And also, like, business owners like yourselves, even when you're kind of starting, or we've got sales reps in a business, there is that almost fear around, I don't want to be branded as a salesperson. I don't want to learn a script. I don't want to feel rigid. And I think exactly as you've said there, it's because traditionally there's these scripted processes or these one-liners or there's these kind of closing lines. And I've even seen sales training where they're like 3 closes that work. And it's like, you can't just interchange from like one sentence that's going to work for somebody to take their money from them. Like, this just doesn't work in that process at all. So I think hugely moving people away from a scripted process frees up that conversation and totally takes the pressure off. And one of the things that it really starts to trigger is stopping people from focusing on the sale and just focusing on exactly like you're saying, what is it that you need and can I actually help you before I even consider selling anything to you? And when you start to focus on that, it totally changes the whole feeling towards sales massively.
Right. I think what happens is people open up, the defenses start coming down and they actually have a good conversation. And what I love about it, and just talking from a lead producing agency, what I love about it is when you're actually developing a really strong incoming inquiries where people are reaching out to you, this kind of process works so well, because it's a little bit like, hey, I've reached out to my doctor, I'm going into my doctor, I've got a problem, and the doctor then walking through a whole bunch of questions and finding out what's wrong with you, and then coming up with a solution to actually solve your problem, and you feeling very comfortable that the doctor has my best interest at heart. Here's a question with that. Before I go into that, just to finish that thought, was, when you've got that incoming inquiry, as a salesperson, I always felt empowered because that person's coming to me to ask for help, right? I'm not knocking on their door and saying, hey, you need some help. And they're like, what? Huh? I think it's a bit harder to have a kind of, I'm going to knock on your door and let me talk about all your problems. It doesn't necessarily work quite as well. But because we're living in a time now that most businesses, if they're not doing it, should be generating lead generation and incoming inquiries. They shouldn't be having just totally a whole team that only does outreach. This sales process is so powerful with that incoming call. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the doctor and then go, oh, no, I'm not. Yeah. You say I've got like a broken collarbone and everything. But I'm going to go and talk to 3 other doctors and find out, what they think. Maybe you do. Maybe if you literally don't have a broken collarbone, they're telling you what you do. But if you've got a broken collarbone, you're just going to get it fixed. So anyway, with all of that, a big part of your brand, from what I can see, is closing with no cringe. We are not making people feel uncomfortable, right? How would you describe the mindset or approach that separates your method from those traditional sales tactics? I know we dropped into it a little bit, but can we dive into the traditional sales tactics that make you cringe and how they use their
100%. I think everybody has had experience with I would tarnish as bad or slimy sales reps. Like, everybody can recall an experience that they've had with those people. I mean, I pulled some stats a couple of months ago from a study by Mintel. What they kind of pulled apart from that is that you have right now there are 90% of consumers that don't trust salespeople. First of all, they've got like a negative perception of salespeople. 87% of those consumers don't believe that a sales rep can understand their situation. But then what that leads to is 70% of consumers end up with decision paralysis, and 70% of consumers need advice before they buy, but they don't trust the sales reps. So when you look at a mindset piece, and just to give that in the foreground, the mindset piece around it is just kind of actually detaching the word sales from these roles. Because again, as a business owner, as a sales rep stepping into that conversation, if you're telling yourself a sales rep, but you know in the back of your mind that you've got these perceptions of other sales reps, you're almost automatically playing that role, whether you mean to or not. So when you start to realize that, like I say, 90% of people have got a negative perception of a sales rep, don't be a sales rep. So who are you going to be instead? So it's kind of to your doctor piece there of be a consultant, be a friend, be a trusted advisor, be a marketing nerd, be like, who is it that you need to be to get that person to feel comfortable in that conversation with you? And then once you start to play that character, it feels real because you're genuinely trying to help that person, which is the truth, right? We don't want to take on clients that we can't help because we're going to end up with bad review and refunds. Like, it's never a good situation to be in. So just be truthful in that position. So for me, in terms of a mindset piece, I always focus really early on with sales teams about what is that character that you're trying to play. What's their personality? What's their skill set? What are they interested in? Who do they help and what do they do at the company? And then you can work on what that conversation looks like around it. So that's one of the first things that we typically look at.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say stop being a salesperson. I was doing a speech in front of a couple of hundred business owners at a conference, and one of the things I said to them was, how many of you love the thought of advertising? And no one put their hands up. How many of you love the thought of marketing? And maybe one person put their hand up, and this is a full room of people. And I said, well, but how many of you think it's important to communicate effectively with your community? And all their hands went up. And I said, well, instead of thinking of marketing and advertising as marketing and advertising, let's start just saying communicating with the community. And then we've got all these different tools of different ways that we can go about it. Because there is some mind blockage, I think, when it comes to sales and marketing. And people who are doing it understand how important it is. But at the same time, like for myself as well, sometimes I roll my eyes at the marketing, and I run a marketing company, right? Sometimes I roll my eyes at salespeople, and I have salespeople that work for me. I've been a salesperson myself. So we all kind of get that feeling of, I don't like this. And I think a lot of it is, I remember having this conversation with this young sales guy, and he literally was doing the Sandler sales process with me.
Right.
And I could feel myself going through each step.
Oh.
And he was talking to me, he must have been 19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, at this time, I think this was a couple of years ago, so I'd have been in 47 or something. And, with all the experience and, the bads and the goods that come with being 47 and being in business for 20 something years. And he's talking to me, and I literally had to stop him, and I said, do you know anything that you're talking about here? Because you're not winning me over, and I'm kind of getting turned off because you're talking to me like you've been through it and you know it all. And I'm kind of getting slowly annoyed by you. Do you understand that? How are you picking that up? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. And like, yeah, I'm sure he didn't. But he was literally going through a process that he was taught. I didn't end up buying from him. I said, good luck. He can't do anything about being 19 or 20. He can't do anything about going through that sales process. However, what I would suggest, and anybody that's listening to this that has a sales team, especially of some young, aggressive, like wanting to do it kind of guys, that what Emily does would not have that reaction to me. If I had the conversation with this 19-year-old who was just trying to see how he could help me, I would feel like I'm talking to a representative of a company that I thought might be able to help me, rather than this guy trying to put himself in a position that he knows it all. And I think that's kind of what the difference is. I think it's somewhat complicated. I think it feels complicated. I would say complicated only from the point of view is that it's to some degree, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, radically different in a mindset from a sales standpoint, that I think some salespeople find it difficult to quite get the concepts because it is different. Because, hey, you're just trying to help. Is that the feedback that you've got sometimes? Because you've coached lots of different sales teams and so forth. Do you get that from salespeople?
100%. The thing for me, Andy, is if you've got a team that are struggling with sales. Typically the mindset is, well, I'm working really, really hard. I'm trying really, really hard for these sales. If I'm going to get better, surely I've got to work harder. I've got to sell harder. But actually, they really, really don't. And it's kind of the strategy that we know. It's a structure. So for anybody that's listening to this, we mentioned scripts before. We don't give a script. I don't want anybody following a script. It's structure. So it's just a framework that we fill in the blanks with the conversation that we have. But what sales teams then start to notice is they're stripping back that conversation. They're hardly talking for the first 15 minutes of the call. A couple of questions here and there. I want them to stick themselves on mute for the majority of the first of it, because they're just focused on listening and asking questions. Because I think there's a big stigma, a big kind of assumption about sales is that you have to know everything about every industry or every client, or you have to, like you said about that poor 19-year-old lad who definitely tried to sell to you, where he's trying to like outsmart you on the subject, but by no means were you expecting him to know more about your situation than you did. You just wanted to understand, can you hear what I'm asking for and give me an answer of whether you can fit that or not? And that is fundamental of sales really, is, okay, have they listened to me? Have they asked enough questions so they've not made any assumptions? And do I feel safe with the advice that they're about to give me based on what they understand about my circumstance? Just to add to that piece to round it off is, I think a lot of more widely taught sales strategies kind of pump up sales reps a bit to feel like it's kind of like being who's the bigger person and who knows more and who has to kind of really set that kind of precedent. But
like the Wolf of Wall Street kind of sales.
But oh my God, no one's opening up to someone like that. Like, chill out. You just don't need to do it. So I think, just to answer your question, we just don't need any of that kind of process in it at all.
Yeah, there is something special when you get it right. And I've actually had this feedback. I think my natural sales process, because whilst I was quite learned when it came to the Sandler process, I liked the consultative stuff. There was a few steps that I kind of adjusted, and there was kind of like the Andy process, which I'd teach to people. And it was much more similar to yours, where we'd focus on the person. And one of my things that I thought was very, very important was getting on the call with somebody, to sit there, rub my hands together and go, I'm really, and say into my head, almost like a mantra, I'm really excited to be able to help somebody today. I'm really excited to help a small little business get to where they're trying to be, and really excited to talk to this person. And I would go in with quite a positive energy, not, because I think some salespeople, especially if they're struggling, there's angst, there's that commission breath. There's that, I need to get a sale over the line, which is death. Really, in a lot of ways, because people pick up on that intuitive spidey senses start going off, and you're like, I don't want any part of this. But if somebody comes in, and I kind of felt it with you, if I'm honest with you, I don't know if you were rubbing your hands together hoping to help a small business owner, but coming in with that kind of energy of I just want to help this person, and they may do business with me, but let's help them. That is what probably was the biggest takeaway that I quickly got from what you try to, I guess, your ethos is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, I don't know if you have anything to say about that. I do have another question though. So, for someone who's really new and uncomfortable with selling, right? Because like, let's say this little 19-year-old that we're talking about, what's one piece, just a singular piece of mindset advice that you would coach them to adopt first? Is it similar to that rubbing the hands together or being excited to help somebody? Or what is your process with that?
It's such an interesting one. So, I mean, again, it's kind of similar to what we spoke about, is the mindset piece of like detaching yourself from a salesperson. Because I think, first of all, it's if you're frightened to sell, you're not going to do a good job of it. So it's kind of just taking that apart, and it's just a conversation with somebody. And then I think the other kind of big rule for me is that don't focus on talking. Like, you don't have to pitch. And I think so many business owners and businesses with teams go into this being like, here's your pitch. I've had to take slide decks that are 20 slides long off sales teams and say, don't you dare share your screen in this sales call. Like, please don't share this collateral, because it takes away from a conversation and it's pre-prepared. So it's also just taking that mindset of, you don't have to be pressured to pitch and say, these are all my USPs. Like, I don't even pitch USPs ever on a sales. I can either help you or I can't help you. And it's getting into that position of take the pitch out of it, take you kind of putting best foot forward and impressing anybody. Assume you've already impressed them. That's why they booked a call. That's why they're interested to get your advice. Now we're just solely focused on, can I find out enough information about this person and their situation to confidently play that back to them, first of all, to say, can I make sure that I can understand where you are And then we go, great. Now, genuinely talk to them about the best route forward for them in their situation. Sometimes that also comes for advice that I have to give to sales reps, because it can get quite exciting when you get to that part of the conversation and that person you're selling to, the lead or helping is probably a better word to put in there, is like, yes, that's going to help me. It's really easy for that sales rep to go, oh, I'm going to sell them the most expensive product that we have, or the highest tier product, or whatever it is. But that's not necessarily the best thing to do. And that's why we sell with morals of, if actually the best route genuinely forward for that person is your lowest, most entry-level product, take them down that route, upgrade them later. That's also fine. So it's also just remembering, sell with integrity for like what's actually right. Listen more, clarify that you're on the right page, because there's nothing wrong going in and then you've totally misunderstood the person's situation, and genuinely help them to see the clarity that they need. And I know I've kind of given you a few more tips than just the mindset piece. So I think that's the kind of the biggest thing really in that show.
I think what you're saying there then is, if you're a salesperson, you get into an organization, this process might not be the best if the company is selling a crappy product that they don't stand behind. And there are those companies, especially in my industry, there's a lot of agencies that are just full of it. We've got so many clients that have come to us after working with 6 or 7 clients, and thankfully, some of those clients have been with us for years now, and that we became their agency. We became part of their team, being able to sell. And I think what I'm proud of on my side of the bench is that we have actually built a company that my sales team can actually utilize your tactics, which really only work if you're actually selling something of value, where you're actually doing something good for somebody. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here, because one of the things that I'd love people who are out there who are being sold to, even, it's good to kind of hear the inside story from a sales coach and what salespeople should be thinking about if you're coming up against a good one, right? Coming up against one, I guess, is the wrong word for you guys. But if you're being sold to, and you feel like you're being pulled through this process, and there's more talking, they're more interested in what they have than what you're dealing with, you're probably with the wrong person. And this is something I've been saying in a lot of podcasts as a guest, and a podcast that I've done myself, is it's really important when you're choosing agencies to find the one that actually truly cares about you. And I think it's not just agencies, it's businesses, right? Well, the reason why we ended up hiring you, Emily, was I felt, regardless, you did a good job if you were pretending, but I felt like you cared about our business and you wanted to help us. And you made me feel like you knew of ways to help us. And I did feel like if there was no helping us, you might have said, hey, I don't know if we're the right fit. And I know we've said that to clients. We've said, hey, I don't think we can help you right now. But would you say that that's true? Like, you know, not every business, like if you're a bit of a shady operation that kind of is selling smoke and mirrors, that this process probably doesn't work so well.
100%. I mean, the reason I'm smiling so much is like, and we have a caveat in all of our onboarding, and my team in the background. So obviously individuals that are familiar with marketing is typically you have like an intake form. So when somebody's booking a call, they give you business details. We do due diligence before we even book a call, or we accept a call. So I've had multiple businesses that I have had to turn away solely because of Trustpilot reviews or debunking YouTube videos where I've seen that actually they're selling a total lie or a get rich quick scheme, or all of those sorts of things. And I will so strongly protect this strategy because of the safety of others. And what I mean by that is the strategy that we go through. We're not asking questions that are so widely taught in sales of like, oh, what keeps you up at night? And wow, wouldn't life be nice without all that stress that you've got on you? Like all of that manipulative stuff we're not teaching anyway. The questions that we use are really, really planned out and intelligent to really draw useful pain rather than useless pain from people that we can actually use to help them see why they need the help, not to just put them in a situation that they feel manipulated. But with that said, I will never teach these strategies to somebody who I don't think is doing well for somebody, because like you say, it's just going to manipulate people, and unfortunately they can't actually help them or give them genuine advice.
And you have to be a special kind of bad person to be able to use your strategy and actually do it in a way that it feels believable. I think you'd have to be a pretty broken person to be able to do that. Right. We've spoken a little bit about your process. We've got to talk a little bit more about it. But before we do that, kind of like, I know at the beginning you were talking about your own experience of having, has there been any major difficulties in your life that you had to work through to get to where you are today? I think it's important because you are a little ray of sunshine in a lot of ways. You have a lot of positivity that you exude, but oftentimes in my experience, there's oftentimes, I don't want to call it a darker place, but maybe a ditch that somebody drove into, and that's part of what grew them to where they are today.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, just talk about my journey, not even necessarily in sales. So I was very, very lucky. I say lucky, ambitious. In my very early 20s to get to a position where I was in a kind of board of directors position for a very, very successful business. And I was working so incredibly hard at this company and doing really well, hitting targets, but kind of was stuck in this, I guess, cycle of kind of not necessarily hitting my true potential and kind of really keeping that kind of umbrella on where I was. And I kind of hit a point with that where I totally needed to go off track and like rewrite what I was doing. So I hit a point in that situation where I, at a very, very young age, was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to walk away from this opportunity because it's not working. It's not fulfilling. It's totally, I'm not learning the things I want to do. And I'd been stuck in that cycle for so long, like something has to change. So I sold my house, I left a relationship, and I traveled to I traveled the total end of the country to totally start up again in sales as well at this point, to be like, let's just see what's going to happen. So I was in a city that I'd never been in before I didn't know anybody around me. I didn't have any experience in the space that I was going in. And I was like, oh my gosh, all I've got is my opinions and my confidence here to go and figure it out. So yeah, that was definitely the route for me. And I think my biggest lesson from that is to always look above the pulpit. And I think what I ended up doing was kind of getting stuck in this repeated pattern of like feeling I had achievements, but then not actually ever moving forward for a good 5 years in like life. And I was stuck at the same financial level, the same position, even though I had all these accolades, didn't actually mean anything for me personally. So I think that's something that I try to do now in business, is not get stuck where I am. I'm always looking for, but what else is achievable? Who's doing more than me? Who's doing things that are different to me that I can learn from, so I can never ever get stuck in that cycle again. So I think for me, that's been the biggest lesson for me so far. For sure, there will be more to come.
Right. I mean, there's a thing that I say and share with people all the time, especially with clients, is change never happens without change. And coming to an understanding that change is needed is step one, right? Realizing there's so many people that spend 40 years sitting in the same thing and don't change anything and become quite unhappy. Understanding that change needs to happen doesn't always necessarily mean traveling to the other end of the country, ending relationships and changing industry.
It was dramatic.
But change doesn't happen without change, right? Many times we'll get a client that will come in, and we're a little different from a marketing organization. We start from what is it that our client wants. Like, we'll go deep dive to the point of, do you want to renovate your house? Do you want to buy a new house? Do you want to go on vacations? Do you want to send your kids to college? What do you want out of this in 3 years' time? What do you want to be able to do? What changes do you need to see to feel like you're successful? And then when we go through all of that, it's a lot easier for us to talk to the client about, okay, right now, what you're doing is not going to get there. In fact, part of the process is, here's what your business is today, but then there's 4 phases in your business, right? So you got your business is this today. What is your business going to be in 12 months? What is your business going to be in 24 months? And ultimately, what is your business going to be in 36 months, which is 12 quarters, right? And your business needs to evolve through that time. There needs to be sometimes product changes, sometimes messaging changes, sometimes marketing changes, staffing changes, process changes, all sorts of things need to go through. And the company that you have today likely will not be the company that you'll have in 12 quarters or 36 months. If you want those goals that you have. And we always talk to people and we say, dream big, go onto Zillow or go onto whatever your preferred real estate app is, and look for a house in a place that you would love. Put that on there. We can figure it out. We can say, okay, if you put a down payment and monthly payments and blah, blah, you need this amount of income.
Yeah.
What kind of car do you want? What kind of blah, blah, blah. Do you want to be seeing family? Like for me, flying around the world, being able to do that is really important, because I have family in Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, USA, and I want to stay connected with them. So having an income that allows me to do that's really, really important. Whatever that is to you, we figure out and then we back it up. And that comes with change. And I think what you just said with your own journey is that you realized that I needed to change something. I wasn't happy with something. I don't like the trajectory that I have. So I'm prepared to change everything to make the change happen, right?
I think, and I love what you said because it touches on time, and that's one big thing for me. So I get a thing that I like to call time anxiety, and I look at almost my life in years, and I start to go, okay, well, that's one gone. What happened? And what you were talking about there is like, it's reverse engineering the use of that time, because you'd be so, which I know you know, but anybody kind of planning their business, you'd be so surprised at how quick 4 years goes. And if you don't sit down and actually look at it and account for it, you could look back and you've already used 5. So it's so important to reverse engineer that. And also, I know so many business owners that through networking and circles, and also through business as well, that almost are fearful to surround themselves by other business owners and other experts to get advice from it. And I think what ends up happening is you kind of stay in your own lane because, and this isn't everybody, of course, but lots of business owners will stay in their own lane because they want to claim the success and they want to say, okay, but I did this, I went on this journey. But actually, you can save so many errors and you can make so many shortcuts rather than you having to go through those mistakes if you take the advice and the planning from people who've been there and done that. And I think that's a massive lesson in what you're talking about there in terms of the reverse engineering your business trajectory. Great, go and get the advice from the people who've been there and done it already, and then go and implement it in your own situation with that help. So yeah.
You tend to become the community that you would become a part of, right? So if you're rubbing shoulders with a certain type of person, you're probably going to become similar to that certain type of person. So if you want to be or have a certain type of life, you need to look at that. And I'm not necessarily saying discard your friends from school and college and family and so forth, but you need to add to your life. Because I know there's some experts out there that say, yeah, discard the people that were in your past, but that's part of who you are.
Yeah.
So I don't subscribe to that. But what I do subscribe to is add some people that are where you want to be, or at least kind of on that same journey with you to get to where you want to be, and has that same mindset. Because many people, like I have many family members, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you want to look at it, we really don't have a lot of drive to do a whole bunch of stuff. What they give me though is an element of their focus is just quality of life and living a good day. And they're not looking to be wealthy. They're not looking to have big homes or whatever, but they love a great day at the beach. They love spending time with family. They love singing songs. They love all of that kind of jazz, which brings you another type of thing. But on my side, where my brain is and has been for a long time, is being self-sufficient and not needing anything from anybody, and putting myself in a position where I can help others. When I deeply talk about this kind of stuff, I tend to get, the hair on the back of my head starts to stand on end, because I feel like it's the reason why I'm put on the planet, is to really learn what it is to be able to take care of yourself and your family and your community. And if I can help other business owners do the same, then we actually create that community that we all kind of want, right? And I think before we got on this podcast and started chatting, we were talking a little bit about some of the crazy stuff happening in the world. And I think a lot of times it's very easy for us to go, you know what, the world is tough and what am I doing in it? But I think individually we can make a little difference. If I help 10 people reach their goals, and I'm lucky enough that I can affect 120 people. We have 120 clients, and if we can make their lives better and allow them to help another 100 people, we're quickly turning into tens of thousands of people that we're positively affecting. And that was, if I'm honest with you, one of the reasons why I really thought that, and I think you've actually heard me say this to my team, is I wanted our sales process to reflect what we do as a company. And you were the first process, or I even hesitate to call what you do like a sales process. It's kind of like a methodology, a belief and ideology from a sales standpoint that fit the way I want to run my business, where it's about doing good for people, where it's about making a difference in people's lives in a real way where they felt it. To the degree that I know that there's times, and I spoke to a company yesterday where the feedback was, you guys are our guys. Right. And we felt that through the sales process, that they felt connected to us at that point. And I think you'd say, I did my job as a sales coach. That person who came on board as a new client was like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to buy. Tell me how much stuff I need. Tell me what services I need, because I know I believe in you guys. You've sold me on you. Yeah. Right. Rather than the process.
Definitely.
Do you agree?
It's trust. it's trust, and you can't. I mean, obviously, you there are some people, like you say, who may be very, very broken people that will fake trust building. But in terms of the process that, and obviously I know the team very well, and they're fantastic. Like, they're all brilliant at building trust because they do so deeply care, but also follow their intuition with where conversations and questions need to go. And it keeps circling back around to that question piece of, we're just trying to give that person the time to feel like they've offloaded and been heard. And I think snip it into what we kind of teach is one of the sections in the structure is called the pour. And it quite literally is, we just let the person talk with no interruption. I'm not sat there going, okay, cool. Not doing any of that stuff, which is taught very widely online. You just shut up, let this person talk. And what actually happens is it's this amazing phenomenon, because in any other situation, if this lead or this customer's been speaking to their family or their friends or another salesperson about their situation, often they're getting cut off by people, or often they're sat in their own head being like, oh, I've been speaking too much here. I'm just going to kind of stop talking now because I've just been wittering on. Whereas when you've got somebody who's sat there giving you, although albeit on Zoom, eye contact, saying, no, keep talking, they start to build that trust even from that first 5 minutes of, oh my goodness, this is the first time I actually feel heard. And that person's now asking me really, really relevant questions to what I've just said. And it's kind of that realization for those leads of, am I with somebody that I can trust? And then that starts to build through that conversation. I think that's what's so beautiful about the first half of the kind of structure, really, is seeing that relationship built without any rapport. Nobody's asking anybody where they live or like the location or what football team they support. Like, you don't need any of that rubbish. It's literally just through listening, which is crazy.
It is. I think ultimately what you're teaching is the art of showing true interest in what matters to the person that you're speaking with. And I think it kind of like goes further than just communicating with somebody that you're trying to sell something to. I think it's about building relationships. I think you could probably be a dating coach or a relationship coach of some sort, right? Maybe a political communication mate coach or something. Because a lot of it is basically you're keying on the things that are most important to somebody and allowing them to tell you what it is, which is really the key to actually a successful sale in my mind. So can you share maybe a success story that you've helped with a client that to this day really inspires you and really captures what you do is all about?
I absolutely can. And this one makes me laugh because his wife absolutely loves me. And he now hates me because I pulled him out of retirement. So he's furious with me. So I had a wonderful gent called David who came to me, who's in the insurance space based out of California. The initial conversation that we had, we've spoken a lot about how much customers and leads will open up during these conversations. So obviously he was very, very, very transparent with me. And he'd sort of said, I've been self-employed for the last 20 years. I've been selling insurance to very hands-on businesses, so things like mechanics and like workshops and things like this. And he said, I've been selling insurance for the last 20 years. And he said, but in the last year and a half, he said, I've had no new clients. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know where to get my leads. So I've got people that are leaving me because they've got other fandangly businesses coming in, selling ads, all of these things. And he was like, how do I compete? And the conversation that we had was, number one, do I just retire and take my pension, sell up the business, do whatever it is? Or do I give this one last shot and literally invest his last savings for this business and into the training? And again, this is about being as genuine as we can. If I didn't believe that what I teach could help him, I would not have ever taken any of his final investment. But knowing where he was and what I could do, we said, yeah, well, let's go ahead and do it. And this story has the possibility of making me cry here. Anyway, so we worked with David for 6 weeks. And what we basically did was we kind of looked at his lead generation process, because he was very, very reliant on referrals, which, like I say, had not happened for the last year and a half. So we said, right, you are going to be moving to cold calling, sir, which he was not happy about, as you can imagine. But when we look at cold calling, which is obviously the total opposite to what we've been talking about on this call, but you have to then create a narrative and a need for a product, or make somebody aware of a problem that they already have. So we created a narrative for these businesses in the insurance space where David essentially became this hero that's saying, hey, you guys don't know this problem, but I've been fighting for the last 20 years to get this sorted. I've been meaning to speak to you. I'm coming around, like, I've got to kind of help you guys with this process. to which we started to have loads of conversations because they were like, oh, who is this person coming to help me with this very, very real problem? So week 5 with David, he'd ghosted me on 2 coaching calls. And I was like, where on earth is David? Is he okay? What's going on? And he turned up on our group coaching call for 5 minutes and he said, Emily, I just wanted to let you know that I'm still alive. And he said, but I've just closed 8 out of 8 meetings in 1 week. And he charged each of those clients $2,800 on the spot. He'd closed 8 out of 8 of these meetings, all from cold calls. And he'd made near $30,000 in a week. So going from giving me his last pennies to I'm going to retire to now doing this, he's just absolutely smashing it with that same narrative. So I'm glad I managed to stop myself from crying.
Yeah. No, it's good. Because the reality is, it's the reason why I do this. Like we, as a marketing company, we could be working with a lot of different businesses and we focus on family-based businesses, both on the e-com side of things and from a kids activity center standpoint. And the reason why we do that is we found that the people that own those kind of businesses are special people that actually want something good to be done in the world and want to help others. And it feels very good to put that goodness out there, right? When I talk about it, I feel like, I always talk to people when they're running businesses. I'm like, you've got to make sure you're not feeling like you're swimming upstream, right? If you're feeling like you're swimming upstream, something's broken and change needs to happen. And change doesn't happen, obviously, without change. So we need to start looking at why you're swimming upstream. And I don't even want you to swim across stream because you think you're going to be there and you actually end up over here because you're swimming like that, right? What we want to do is we want to make you feel like you're swimming with the stream. We want to put you in the flow and put you in the right place. So let's work through that process. And I think, that's one of the reasons why I had to work with you. That's one of the reasons why I have my team working with you, is because whilst you're a small part of our whole operation felt like it's swimming downstream, but I felt like our sales system was swimming across stream. I don't feel like it was going upstream, but I didn't feel like it was congruent with what we were doing as a company. And adding the way that your process works really kind of has made sure that the company is actually orientating itself with the flow.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer, call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever. There is something out there. Yeah. And when you're in the flow and when you're heading in the direction that you're supposed to be, everything falls into place. Everything becomes easier. Life can become easier. All of us will have troubles. All of us will have difficulties. All of us will have tragedy and difficulty. That's called life. But if we're headed in the direction that we're supposed to, those troubles, those tragedies, those things that happen to us are much easier to deal with. And actually we can move through and past them much easier. Yeah. And searching for that is a big deal. And I want to just, make sure that everybody understands that I think if you do work with Emily, if you do see kind of how her process works, you'll get a sense of that flow if you're the right kind of person, if you're doing things for the right thing, for the right reasons. So anyway, I keep giving you little testimonies, but I should probably move on from there. So I got a couple more questions because we got to wrap up shortly. But from a coaching yourself standpoint, I mean, you are the coach's coach, right? Or the sales coach. As a sales coach, how do you stay sharp, keep your closing skills evolving? Because obviously things change, technology changes. Do you ever coach yourself, or how does that even work? Do you sit there looking at yourself and talking to yourself, or do you lean on mentors? What is it that you do?
I love this question because I kind of always look at it in 2 halves. So in terms of my own skill set, I still do sales calls here and there. I'm not beneath that, or not above that. So I'll go ahead and jump on calls and still go and do my own analysis because, as you can imagine, I have analyzed thousands, tens of thousands of sales calls probably at this point from different teams. So I can dissociate myself from analyzing myself and go, okay, well, what do we need to improve on? Where do we go from here? But I also do the same thing with my own sales team. So I get them to look at my calls and say, what did I do well? What could I do better? So that they can come back and say, hey, here are all the different areas. But also that aside, in terms of me improving my own skill, it's also the network that I've got around me and also exciting for the growth of my business as well, is bringing on additional coaches to support me in different areas. From my networks and where I have sold and where I've coached past students, I'm constantly looking at what are they doing differently, who's landed a $10 million deal, who's now done a $20 million, who's breaking records, and what is it that they're doing different. I mentioned at the top of our conversation, questioning processes. And I think for me, I've been very, very lucky to be somebody who's a little bit, not cynical, but just questioning of processes and the way that things work, and they may be working now, but is it optimal? But what would it look?
Going back to your questioning and probably annoying all your bosses,
Yes.
all the police, right?
The analytical brain, 100%. And I think it's just,
Why?
yeah, why? But it's just getting into that process of how do we then question the way that we do things to always evolve? And I worked with an incredible woman many, many years ago, and she used to always say that nothing was ever a failure. It was always a fall forward. And I love that ethos of like, I would so much rather go, oops, that didn't work, but what did I learn from it? Than, oh, what would have happened if I did do that? So that's why I'm always looking into other circles of people who, I mentioned looking above the pulpit as well, who's doing well, who's doing things differently. How could that apply to what I'm doing? Test it, check the data. If we have an improvement, we implement it. If we have a negative, then we don't touch it. So it's kind of really moving with that process.
Good, because I think that's important to hear, because you're not resting on your laurels. You are pushing forward. You've got things. I think you are an embracer of change requires change. So many business owners really struggle with change requires change. They want change, but they're not required to do anything to make those changes. And I think self-teaching, looking for new things. If I'm honest, one of the things that I do probably most of the day, which I don't know if my team, my team probably doesn't care, but I spend a lot of time just looking into stuff. I spend a lot of my day learning, trying to learn new things, finding out stuff. I'm super involved with what's happening, I'm very up to date with what's happening, politically around the world. I want to see where people's headspaces are, techniques, sales, technology, all of that stuff. You've got to keep learning. You got to keep pushing yourself in there. And as a CEO or a business leader, you've got to be the person that knows stuff. If you don't, you're going to make poor decisions. Now, saying that, I'm a big believer in business as a team sport. No business owner, I think, has been successful without building really good support mechanisms around them, especially like an advisory team. So building, those mentors, if you want to call them mentors, or just advisors. Like I have a great attorney, I have a great accountant. We have a series of people that I would say I would call on if I have a question. You would probably be part of that group now as well, because hey, we're struggling with this. What do you think? You need to have those people and surround yourself, and building in that advisory team so you can constantly be leveling up has to happen. Today's, with AI and everything is moving so quickly that if you're not leveling up, at least so you know what questions to ask or to figure out whether or not someone's full of it. Because you don't need to be the expert. You just need to be able to say, oh, does Emily pass the sniff test? Is she full of shit? Or is she actually bringing something to the table that I should be listening to, right? And I think that's a really powerful thing. I've kind of like gone on a little bit with that. But I do have a couple of quick questions. I know we're going to wrap up in a minute, but future of sales coaching, right? With AI, automation, changing buyers' expectations, what do you see as the future of sales coaching, and how should, sellers adapt to this?
I find this topic fascinating because, like you say, it moves
well.
it's scary, fascinating, but terrifying at the same time. So I think for me, the way that I like to look at AI is an enhancement. And I think there's so many areas in business that we can totally replace processes and different job roles and things like that. And with AI, totally, we don't need them anymore. But when it comes to sales, I do think that we're going to see almost like a switch. So right now we've got people that are quite afraid really of salespeople, and they're quite reluctant to get into a conversation. It's hard sometimes to convert people to even book a sales call when they need your help. So we've got that resistance to it. I think they're going to start, and I say they as in leads and customers or potential customers, are going to start to crave salespeople, because more and more where we're kind of automating the initial processes, I have seen businesses that are totally trying to replace sales conversations with AI, where we can have that taken away from leads and people in general, where actually they're going to be grateful when they get on with a person. And I think we're going to see that shift, or that authority shift almost, where sales...
Unless AI is selling to AI.
Unless AI is selling to AI. It's true.
And the AI are making decisions as to whether or not to purchase or not. Like, you're right. It's got to be a connection. I don't like giving money to people I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't care what the product is. If I don't like, we bought a car that we wanted since we were first married, there was that's not true because this car didn't exist back then, but there was a car that we always wanted when my son was born. And we got to a point that we could buy it, and there's this car, same the color, the whole 9 yards. And the salesperson was just so annoying, and I couldn't buy it. I had to go to a different dealership. And thankfully there was the same car. I was at the other dealer, and there was a guy that I really, really liked, and I bought the car from them. And you're right. It's like people are going to crave. I think people are going to crave if we actually have money.
Yeah.
Right. What I worry about is that we might get to the point where we're all getting paid $3,000 a month from the government because no one has a job because everything's AI. That's the scary part, right? But I do believe that there's going to be an element, I think humanity, which might be a good thing, because right now we're kind of separating ourselves with social media and everything, that we're isolated, yet we feel like we're connected like never before, but we're more isolated than possibly ever before.
Yeah.
That maybe this is going to bring communities together where people are going to, because I think we're a herding type group, right? We're not all in the mountains by ourselves. We tend to congregate around cities and towns, and we join organizations, and we want to be part of something, and we want to be part of something human. I think you're right there when it comes to people. AI is going to help us with data. AI is going to help us with information. AI is going to give us the ability to make better decisions. But I hope and I think we have an opportunity, and I think this is where AI goes down the wonderful world of where things get much better, is that it helps humanity be better rather than replaces humanity, which is the darker side of things. Would you agree?
I definitely agree. And I think my last word on the AI side of things is the way I see it is split really for business owners. So one thing I'd always encourage, if you're listening to this and you have a sales team, your team are probably a bit fearful of it, just for the stuff that we've spoken about is, am I going to be replaced? How do I use it? I don't even know what apps to use. It's kind of that fearful factor. And what I'd encourage you to do is help educate them. And if you don't know how to, reach out for the support to teach them on this, but how to get them to prep ahead of a sales call, how to get them to use AI to help them keep track of their pipeline so they don't have to do all of the monotonous admin that sales reps are typically asked to do. Let them replace that stuff. But then also heeding a bit of a warning with it. I've seen so many business owners who say, we don't need to go and analyze sales calls manually because I've got this AI bot that goes through it and picks out all the analysis, but don't have tone of voice. They don't have all the understandings of the emotion. They're not sentient beings. Like, they can't do all of that element for us. So the negative effect I've seen on sales teams, like their emotions really, they get quite upset by it when a business owner goes, here are the feedback notes from your sales call. Here's everything from AI. And they're like, oh, you've not even taken the time to look at it or help me. And I don't agree with this point because this is what the lead said, actually. Right. It's really damaging. So use it to enhance your team. Do not replace the elements where they need either you or a sales coach or a sales manager, whoever it is. Please don't try and replace that with AI.
Yeah, we're still humans and we are humanity, and it's a tool. And who knows where it's going to be in 20 years, 30 years time. But for right now, we're probably 5 years before it's going to be doing things that it's doing today better over the next 5 years. Who knows in 5 years if that evolves into something that we don't know of. Yeah. But definitely the next 5 year period. And when I talk about my 12 quarter plan, the 3 year period, I don't see AI changing our lives to that bigger degree outside of making things easier to find information and to make better decisions. So, hey, if you've got a 3 year plan, which is what I recommend most businesses to do, is to have a 3 year plan. You can have a 10 year plan, but 10 years in my opinion is so long and there's so many changes that could happen that it's almost irrelevant. 3 years is a good solid number that typically change doesn't happen so rapidly that the 3 years is irrelevant, and it's so close that you can touch it. You almost know who you will be in 3 years time. I don't know who I will be in 15 years time. I've got an 8-year-old son. I might be a granddad, right? In 15 years time, right? So, who knows? If he has a kid, it kind of, but he's 8. Yeah. Right. So I'm in a different world from where 15 years would be for Andy. Right. So 3 years periods are really good. And I love the breaking down into quarters. Quarters is a nice time period that's short enough that you can make headway, but long enough that the data is good. And then you just string 12 of those quarters together from a sales standpoint. So thinking about that methodology in my head with AI, I think we're not looking at anything crazy in the next 3 years. I mean, obviously ChatGPT just got agency. Like I can actually have my AI book me flights if I want to. Whether or not I want to give them access to all of my stuff is another question. I don't trust it quite yet. So anyway, to wrap this all up, let's have a quick little question here that might be an easy answer for you. If you could leave the listeners and viewers with one closing principle that would make the biggest impact moving forward, what would that be?
I think the one key thing to remember is to quite simply stop talking and just start listening. It's literally the biggest shift that you need to make now. So I will leave you with that. I won't overcomplicate it. Stop talking, start listening.
Stop talking and start listening. I think that's something that we all should be doing. I think if all honesty, we've spoken about sales, we've spoken about business growth, but I think societally, we all need to stop talking a little bit and start listening to each other and stop telling everybody what we think and what we want and start listening to what others are thinking and what they want. And I think if we could get a little bit of Emily advice or wisdom, I think society might be a little bit better. So anyway, with that thoughtful close, thank you, Emily, for joining us today and having this lovely conversation. Where can somebody reach out to you if they wanted to chat more to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the best place to find me is probably my Instagram. So if you don't have Instagram, I do also have a website. But if you look for _coach_ on Instagram, you'll find me, or at www.theclosingcoach.com, and you'll also be able to find me there.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. It's been lovely having you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Thank you.